Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 644. The only question is why? July 26, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. Well, the Olympics have started, which is one less worry for advertisers. But that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of all the worries brands still have during these highly unusual games. How should brands deal with all the potential pitfalls that remain? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, whether Snap is truly hot again, why you shouldn't use the term gamer anymore, what to know about Roblox, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder of the 6 Pixels Group, author, speaker, blogger, podcaster, Canadian, Mr. Mitch Joel. Hey, Mitch.
Bobby, how are you?
I'm doing well. And joining him tonight, we welcome back the Chief Brand and Marketing Officer for GRK Fresh Greek and board member at Mashburn Enterprises, Mr. Jonathan Sackett. Hey, Jonathan.
Okay, I won't. And I would like to point out that Mitch and I are now best friends. So
that's so sweet of you.
It's only the beginning.
But I might disagree with you enough that you'll hate me by the end of this. So let's see how it goes.
Well,
okay.
We'll see how it works. Yeah, because it's just like, we can always do the passive aggressive thing and not talk to each other, and that would make for a really great show.
Hey, funny you should say that.
Well, let's get into the topics. First up, the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games have started under a cloud of controversy. I mean, there's the COVID cases that are already springing up in the Olympic Village. There's public outcries from Japanese citizens as COVID numbers increase in Tokyo and people don't want the games to be there. There's no fans allowed into the country, which has caused a lot of consternation from people who are competing in the games. And there's even an approaching typhoon. It's like the god has looked down on this games and said, no, you will not have them.
I think you mean Zeus.
It's like a snow.
Yeah.
I wrote down here, it's like a slow-moving disaster. But Mitch, obviously the games are worth billions to sponsors, and that's probably what drove the games to go on as not quite as scheduled, but a little bit delayed by a year. I got to wonder, if they're worth billions to sponsors in the best of years, what about now? What do you think about the game's value to sponsors who are still participating in the games after a year of delays and all these controversies surrounding them?
The question why comes to mind when we look at this year's Olympics. And it feels to me, when I speak to smart, intelligent, good-looking business people, they always tend to lean towards this idea that it's because, well, the sponsors were there and the advertisers are there. And I don't understand this being in the marketing industry, because if I were a sponsor or an advertiser staring down the barrel of a gun of the situation that they're currently in, where am I deriving my value? And so if it is a multi-year deal, maybe I'm locked in, maybe I'm renegotiating, but I'm not happy being associated with it currently if I'm any form of advertiser. And I thought there was a great article in the New York Times which talked really about Dentsu and their connection to the Japanese market.
I love that article. It was so in depth and so cool. But go on.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a world where Dentsu had, I think it was pre-booked $3.6 billion from sponsors. But then as things roll out, whether it's ad campaigns or promotional events, again, a lot of the stuff happens before, a lot of the stuff happens after. There was this massive bailing. In fact, some of the bigger sponsors really didn't even want to be seen there. And it leads to that first question I asked you, which is, I think, a great place for us to discuss and debate. Why? Why would you do this? And if everyone's saying, well, because all this sponsorship and advertising money, the sponsors are not getting value if they even want to be visible within this disaster. I mean, you mentioned some of the things, but 80% of the Japanese public opposed holding the games because of where Tokyo is in a state of emergency.
Right.
And even if we removed all that, we were just talking before we recorded about how's it going in Canada versus the US in terms of COVID-19. And the answer is somewhat irrelevant because the reality is if you're intelligent and you can look at the world logically, this is going to be a very lumpy recovery, whether it's vaccination process, whether it's supply chain process, whether it's getting access to semiconductors or graphics cards or whatever's in scarce demand these days. And I think this question of why, what was the impetus for them to truly move forward in the way in which they have is what baffles me. And the fact that that money was locked in from a sponsorship and advertising perspective only makes me ask why louder.
Yeah, I think that's something on the lips of everybody. I mean, everybody who's looking at these games is wondering why. Yeah, if you looked at the opening ceremonies, did any of you catch the opening ceremonies? I'm not sure.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, it was a downer. I mean, it was a real downer. I mean, it's just like it went on and on about people dying, and it's just like, and how we have a moment of silence, and it's just like there's nobody in the stands. It was morbid, It was hard to watch.
You're absolutely right. I think, let's face it. We all know you got to follow the money, and that's the answer to the question why is the money somewhere, and whoever's making the money, whoever's printing the money, whoever's processing the money, that's the answer. But I do think you're absolutely right. You watch that opening ceremony, and it was what a buzzkill. The most successful Olympics for advertisers is when it's positioned around hope. And not only the hope of the athletes, the hope of the countries, the underdog from a country and somewhere that you've never even heard of that actually doesn't medal but gives it their best. And those human experiences, that's what the Olympics are supposed to be about. But even if you look at the gymnastics team and Ms. Biles, she's still speaking out against, the obvious problems they had with their doctor, that whole thing. So there is a cloud hanging over this whole experience. What's interesting to me is, Bob, I think you and I were together at the Chief Digital Officer Summit.
Yeah, we were.
And our friend David, who runs it, I'll never forget this, and this is reminiscent of what we just spoke about. What happened was somebody in the crowd asked me what would be my dream thing to advertise or to market. And I said, the easy things are always the Google properties, the new launches of Nike. Everybody always wants to do that stuff. And I said, if somebody could really challenge me to market this pen, and I held up the pen. I don't know if you remember this. And I just said, to me, everything you guys have said has been dead on. But the way I look at it is how would I, as a marketer, advertiser, positioner, whatever, how would I take advantage of this situation for Doritos or whatever the hell we're trying to sell? And that, to me, is the challenge, and that's the most interesting component to this. Because, frankly, have you guys seen the advertising around this? It's like so disjointed. You've got this shroud and this cloud hanging over this whole experience of the Olympics. There's no hope. It's this act of desperation, and then the advertising almost has nothing to do with it, except if you look at the Subway ad where Biles comes flipping in to pay for her sandwich, and it's not really. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, Jonathan, it's funny because I don't look at advertising as what the creators are putting into the market. I look at it as a supply and demand side, and so. Even if the creative was spot on and really like all of that, I don't think the world's heart is into this, and I don't think the consumers who are consuming
right. I'd like to try to see. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm with you though. I'm trying to say that word belief. How can I? On behalf of the brand, on behalf of the initiative, how can I spark something out of this mess that they've created? That's what I was.
Yeah, and I don't know that they even can, because the Olympics, while it happens geographically this time in Tokyo, it actually really happens in every city and within every country. And if I look at where I live here in Canada, and we happen to be quite patriotic as well, you see people wearing the classic Hudson Bay colors, an excitement. You see within the media certain athletes and what our hopes and aspirations are for them. And there's none of that.
Really?
And there's none of that because there's a lot of politics, and there's a lot of COVID, and there's a lot of other things that I think we're focusing on in a moment typically where it's a slow news time. It's the summer. And people want different types of sports, and maybe their major sports are for the most part, maybe done. Okay, there's still baseball, what have you. But I do think that there's just the other part, that demand side, where the world's heart is also not into it. So we can look at it from chasing the money and that. But I think it goes beyond that, because what good is it if the advertising is great when consumers aren't into it?
Well, that could be. I just think that there's right now there's a heightened sense of escapism, I guess I would say, that you know how many Olympics have we seen? I mean, all of us are in our early 20s, so not many, I guess. but like the McDonald's campaigns and the scratch to win every time we get a gold medal, then you win a Big Mac, and there was just all of this hype and stuff around it. As an advertiser, as a guy who's done this for a long time, to me, I love the idea of the challenge to see if I can ignite something. Whether that's possible or not, you still have to have belief and hope somewhere out there. I would like to see somebody not set themselves apart because of an advertising campaign or because of a commercial, but every year we talk about this, every Olympic year we talk about this, that somebody did something great, somebody did something inspirational. I did the documentary and served on the board of Team Hoyt. Do you remember the Rick and Dick Hoyt story, Mitch?
It's very vague. I apologize.
Dick pulled his paraplegic son through the Ironman. So
know it very well. Yeah, know it very well.
Okay, so I was on their board, and I did. John Tesh did the voiceover and of the documentary we did with them and stuff. And I'm always. There's always hope, and I'm always looking for stories of inspiration or something to pull us out of this. But it's almost like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it's almost like they're magnifying the problems and then introducing the athletes. That's what it feels like this year. And you're right, it's because of all the problems. But I don't find anybody separating themselves from that pack in any way, any meaningful way.
Well, what would you?
You also can't do it subtly. And if you really think about what's happening, the overall tone of the games, and I think that is percussive back to the advertisers and sponsors, is this idea of subtle. Let's get beyond this and look towards the future.
Yeah, right. I love that.
That's not strong.
I love the idea that you could pull it off, but who can pull that off right now? You're trying to break through a cloud of noise.
But what should brands be doing? I mean, what can they do? I mean, besides pulling out, which they're obviously not doing, they're actually engaged with it. They're doing ads. They're trying their best to reach out to consumers watching the games. There's got to be something that they can do. And for example, I think that Airbnb has done a fairly good job of dealing with the pandemic and dealing with the athletes and marrying the two about training under COVID. People renting houses to be able to have pools in order to, continue practicing. Things like that are inspiring stories from the pandemic that everybody can relate to. I think those are really good ads that are well positioned for the marketing effort that's going on. But they're few and far between. And I'm just wondering, what would you advise a brand client to do in this situation in order to get more value out of the experience?
I mean, it's twofold. One instance is there is a lot of pent up demand in the world. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit in our next topic when we look at Snap and Snapchat. So one is there's a lot of budget available. And when we are in a moment like this, that's why we're seeing such a massive ad recovery as people are coming back. They want to sell. They want to get aggressive. So there is that component of it where, hey, run with it. You're getting your ads. Maybe you'll get a discount. Keep going. Fine. But no, I think fundamentally my reaction is, pull and hold and wait and fight and try to put your brand in the place that you will really that you really wanted it to be in the first place. This is not the setup for the brand. And I think that if we would remove the Olympics and remove the geography and just look at the world as it is, you would have been sold something as a brand that you wanted to advertise against. And then you're looking at the actual product going, this is kind of a big pile here. I don't know if I want to be here. And that's part of where we're at.
Mitch's Canadianisms are really coming out. Now I can hear it.
I usually get accused of being American, so I'll take that as a compliment.
You know what's funny? I grew up in Wisconsin and I went to school in Minnesota. So every time I give a speech, people are like, "Are you Canadian?"
That happens.
We're brothers. I'm telling you.
You're on Team Canada for these Olympics.
There you go. I am.
Well, Jonathan, what advice would you give to clients? Because I'm interested. You seem to have a handle on what you want to see out of advertisers. I'm not sure if you saw the Airbnb ad. I'm not sure if you saw any ads that are doing it correctly, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on some specific things that brands could be doing or should be doing in this situation. And if they ever face this situation again, what would be their course of action? Would they, cancel and hold like Mitch is saying, or would they proceed with caution and do it a little bit more wisely?
First of all, I haven't seen the Airbnb, but frankly, your description of it sold me on it. I like that. Listen, if you're going to advertise, it's like back when I was doing the Capital One work, right? And boy, would I love to share some stories about Alec Baldwin and what a friendly guy he was to deal with. But that's probably for another show, not this one. But I think what happens is, with Capital One, as soon as we yanked that sponsorship money away from football, but yet we still flirted with the notion of football. Not only did they convert more people to open bank accounts and the credit card itself, of course, but it people still associated us with college football. Okay, they backed out away from the Capital One Bowl, blah blah blah. So you can still have that associative rift. So, wake. So that it's still bleeding on you in a good way that you're associated with something. And what I'm not seeing here, and what I would say is inspiration for us historically has always sold. Whenever we would do something like that, Coke and a smile, a sugar water carbonated drink shouldn't make you smile. There's a disassociation between those two things. But when you tell stories about Rick and Dick Hoyt, when you talk about inspiration and aspiration, a Dorito can still take you there. It can, by saying that we're going to give X amount of dollars to this cause or whatever. But by getting people involved in it, doing the work I did with McDonald's, the Ronald McDonald House, you guys are aware of that charity. Who's the biggest contributor to the Ronald McDonald House? It isn't McDonald's. It's Southwest Airlines. And nobody knows that. You can take advantage of those situations and that causal marketing and still provide inspiration. And you can put inspiration in a chip like Doritos that's not good for you and still find a story and craft a story around that. And frankly, that's what me and my teams have done over the years. And that's probably one of 5 things I'm good at. I can tell you 1,000 things I suck at, but if you take that Bic pen, you take that Dorito chip, you take that soda, launching Coke Zero, it was the same thing. I think what I'm not seeing is that belief, that camaraderie, that joining of togetherness that the Olympics is supposed to provide as a platform. I just don't see anybody taking advantage of it. And I swear to God, man, you throw a product at me or my guys and my team and stuff, we would turn that around and say, Doritos has become an inspiration. I keep throwing Doritos. I don't know why, but it could be anything.
You must be hungry. Maybe you're high. Maybe you're high.
maybe I'm stoned and hungry, Mitch. Maybe that's both. I can craft a story around anything and make it meaningful. But again, it comes from inspiration, and I'm not seeing it out here. And it's not just a commercial; it's an initiative that the commercial can provide, utilizing the platform of the Olympics, the togetherness, the friendly, healthy competition between nations, and that we can all salute each other at the end of the day. And I'll never forget. If I could just throw one story in here quick, my very good friend Kenny Harrison won the gold medal in the Olympics for the triple jump. And I was younger than him, but I watched him compete in high school. He jumped over the sand pit in high school. So they had to measure his heel, and then he went on to win the Olympics. Well, years later, I caught up with him, and we have a video of him taking sand out of the pit after he won the gold medal, and he put it in a Glad Ziploc sandwich bag. And from time to time, he said if he ever gets down or if he just wants to reminisce, he opens that bag of sand and smells it because the Glad bag holds it in. So when I was at Ogilvy as my head of North America title there, I went to Glad and I said, hey, I've got this guy and I've got this video and I've got this story that locking freshness in. Well, maybe it's about locking memories in. Maybe it's that. And they're like, nah. I'm like, okay, well, then let's go back to talking about drug dealers, which is what most of your sandwich bags are. And then I said harumph and left the room.
I think
but again, I'm sorry.
No, the one thing, John, that I might push back on is this idea of belief in coming together. I think that's part of the problem is I don't know if that message would resonate. And I'll go back to the fact that we're in the middle of a very lumpy, whatever it is, point of COVID. We're in a place where there's a lot of countries that aren't even close to getting vaccines and are mad at countries that have so many vaccines and aren't using them. I don't know that there is that sense of togetherness and we're all in this together, especially as we're not just staring down COVID, but climate change, as everyone knows, is the bigger monster that's coming to eat us up.
But isn't that the challenge, though? Like, as a guy, as a former ad exec at the agencies, that's the challenge. There's no challenge too great that we shouldn't try to overcome.
No, but I just don't think that has to be the challenge. I think there's another way potentially to look at messaging versus what I'm trying to say is I think it might be a very difficult message of that one because it is the one of the Olympics and maybe it is more about excellence or maybe it's more about going very, very regional and trying to speak to country by country.
Or
there are
local.
ways in which to do it that I feel might be more approachable because I feel like the overall message, it's not just the Olympics. It's not just the fact that it's Tokyo. It's not just that Tokyo's in the middle of a global pandemic. I think that even if Tokyo was in a better place, I think globally the world would think it's probably not the right time because of how big this K recovery is for many companies, countries rather, and people. Again, it's my own perspective.
Yeah, and I wonder what the long-term impact to the games will be overall because, as you mentioned, Mitch, it's an ugly situation. A lot of countries are not getting the vaccines that they need. There's a general consensus that the games probably shouldn't be happening right now. And it makes you wonder if the Olympic Committee makes this kind of a bad decision. I mean, first of all, and it's purely on the Olympic Committee. I thought Tokyo was partially to blame, but Tokyo has no power here. The Olympic Committee and the contract they signed.
It is absolutely the Olympic Committee.
They can tell the city that's the host city, we're going to have the games, and the city has to respond. So this is entirely the committee.
Sure, but
it makes you wonder what the future experience of sponsors are going to be. Are they going to be more careful? Are they going to be more gun shy? Are they going to be less likely to support the Olympics as a result of this? Because, if you sign a contract with the Olympics, you're suddenly stuck with this, huge goose egg that you can't do anything with. I mean, that's a dangerous proposition.
That bidding process to have you be the host, Chicago's been fighting for it for years, which is where I live. And you're absolutely right. Once you're in, there is no escape.
But that's part of the thing, right? That's why you have that 80% of people in Tokyo not wanting to have it, that public outcry for it. It's also a PR problem because I don't think the world sees it that way. I don't think the world goes, oh, poor Tokyo.
Right.
I think the world's going like, Tokyo, what are you doing? I don't think people really get the full mechanics of how that works. And then when you just think about what a city or country has to invest to make it happen, and again, I say this from home of the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, where we're still paying for the Olympic Stadium.
Well, yeah, and Mitch, I don't know how it is up there. You would probably know better than any of us, but you see over the years all of these abandoned locations and waste of real estate and everything else that has the Olympics is not a moneymaker. It might be a moneymaker on behalf of a brand or something, but on behalf of the host nation, it's rarely a moneymaker.
Well, I mean, you got to factor in a lot of things with that. I mean, I'm not going to defend the Olympics overall, but I mean, it's all about tourism dollars, and it's got a long tail. You're not going to make money on the Olympics,
100%.
but the hope is that you showcase your country and make it more appealing to people who might want to visit.
And it's backfiring on Tokyo.
Yeah, it's hugely
Say the
backfiring on
least.
them. It's not giving any kind of positive look on their country overall. Well, we're going to get into the next topic in just a minute and talk about why Snap is suddenly hot again, which is an interesting subject, one that I was surprised to read, and I'm sure you'll be surprised to hear about. But first, I got to talk about our sponsor for this evening. Today's show is brought to you by Wix. Now, Wix is the leading cloud-based web design and development platform that is trusted by over 200 million people worldwide. And guess what? Your agency can get involved. So when your agency partners with Wix, you unlock an entire digital ecosystem for creating, managing, and growing your business online, allowing you to run your agency the way you've always wanted to. You get the full coding and design freedom to create anything your client needs, along with the tools to manage and collaborate with your team seamlessly from anywhere. And when it comes to growing your business, you can get matched with new leads every day and earn revenue share for every website you create. They're all backed by Wix's industry-leading security and site performance. You'll also have dedicated account managers on standby 24/7 so you can reach your goals and start setting new ones. But don't just take my word for it. See for yourself. Head over to wix.com/partners. and reimagine your agency and what your agency can accomplish. That's Wix, Wix.com/partners, and we thank them very much for their support of our program. Well, as I mentioned, Snap's star is suddenly rising. And if you don't know what Snap is, we're talking about Snapchat. Snap is the holding company or the official company that owns Snapchat. And their star is rising once again. Its stock recently surged on news that Apple's IDFA tag limitations have not really affected it, which makes me wonder, Jonathan, why is this? Why is it that the IDFA fiasco of Apple trying to put all kind of notifications for any kind of use of location data or any kind of tracking of ads, why is that whole situation not affecting Snap and Snapchat like it's affecting other social media companies and other media purveyors? What's your thoughts?
Can I pass?
No, you can't. You got to take this one. There's only two of you. You got to pull double duty.
Listen, we'll go at this one. But first of all, Bob, before I get into that, I just want to say, and I'm not getting anything for this, Wix customer service is excellent.
Say that again louder.
I'm telling you, I have worked at all the big agencies. We all know this, and I have historically seen companies come and go like Wix that a lot of these agencies, oh, well, that's not true creativity and stuff. I'll tell you two things. Number one, their templates that they provide as you design. So they give you basically a platform. It's search engine very friendly. That's number one. And number two is their customer service is second to none. So I'm a fan. I think they do great work. And anytime I've worked with them on behalf of any of our partners, we've gotten excellent customer service at 2 a.m.
Oh,
so
that's fantastic.
I was happily surprised to hear you talk about Wix, and I think they're great. So
Jonathan, how do you feel about Snap?
you know what? I'm glad you asked that, Mitch, because here's the deal. I think, with these social outlets, if you will, the Snap, I've used it only to experiment here and there, but it's not my primary outlet.
You didn't inhale, in other words, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that the three things that they point out, that are making them a success are the lockdowns ending, so people are getting out more, they're traveling, they're wanting to share more things. Number two is the digital ad boom, because a lot of money got shifted around during this trying time that we're dealing with. So you've got people looking for more outlets to spend it on, and the Apple ID problem didn't bleed on these guys. But I think more importantly, and one of the things that I don't see people talking about is it's not out there forever. So if you do something on Snapchat, you can set a duration or kill it after a certain period of time, which I think has been we've all seen everybody digging into everybody's backgrounds when they're running for office or they're running to be a judge somewhere or whatever. Well, in 1998, so and so posted this, or so, like that stuff can come back to sting you, and there's a limited lifespan to using this platform. So that's what I see as the success. Now, the question's going to be, the success that they're having now, I believe that they're having. I think it's also a fixed flex platform, which Twitter didn't have. Do you remember when Twitter was going to go from going beyond their limitation of content, so the 140 characters or whatever? They were trying to move beyond that, and they said they were going to, and then they didn't. Do you guys remember this?
I remember, but they ended up expanding the content limit eventually. I mean, they got it up to 260, I think now, or something like that.
Well, but do you know why? The thing was that they announced they were going to do it, but they had a technological hurdle. Okay, so the platform that Twitter was built on, the technology that it was built on, limited them from expansion. And the other thing that nobody's talking about with Snap is their fixed flex model of technology allows them to expand, allows them to have new platforms for advertisers and new functionality to be plug and play. So it's almost built like on an open source concept where you can come up with new ways of advertising, of content sponsorship, of content publication, and content sharing. That's where they did it right. And it was a sleeper because as soon as they saw what was happening in the eosphere around them, they were able to react to it and do a good job with it.
I always thought that when I read this article, the first thing that occurred to me was that when Snap started out, they didn't allow any kind of tracking whatsoever with their advertising. There was no way to target people. You basically bought an ad on Snapchat and they put it out there into the ether, and it was like TV. It showed up on everybody's feed and everybody saw it, and you got the entire audience with your ad campaign. Now, it limited to big advertisers in that model, and eventually they ended up with some targeting features. But it seems to me that the tracking on that site has always been very limited to begin with, and that was the key to their success now, because now that everybody else is hurting under this whole opt-out fiasco that's going on with the iPhone and with iOS devices, suddenly Snapchat looks pretty good.
The question, though, is, and I don't know the answer to this, is there tracking or lack thereof? Was that intentional or an accident? And is the tracking is it guiding you towards a non-answer, or is it misleading? I really don't know. Because I'll tell you something, when we've tried to track things through it, it's pretty genericized. And I have to believe that was intentional. I have to believe that, because I think when something is starting out and you're trying to pick up traction and you're saying, well, here's our reporting tool and here's who you've reached and stuff, if you don't find a way to artificially inflate those numbers, then you're going to say, well, where's my money going? We've talked about this before. I remember my first job in advertising was with a small digital agency in Milwaukee. And, we did web builds. And then the guys from Web TV, you guys remember Web TV?
Remember Web TV well, yes.
They came out and met with us. And I remember I asked the guy the question. I said, well, wait a minute. These stats the math isn't adding up here. And he goes, well, we're assuming that if you're on the Web TV platform, there's 3 other people in the room. I'm like, okay, how many times have I worked on my computer and had 3 other people looking over my shoulder? Well, that's the TV statistic that we use, so that they could multiply times 4. Okay, so that and the old way of tracking web hits was a graphic element. So if one person visits a homepage and there's 14 graphics divided up in the technology, well, that's 14 hits. That's one visit. So there's a way of artificially inflating the traffic, and I smell a little of that in this situation.
I'm not sure if I'm following on that beat. I think if I look at things,
Mitch, are you going to agree with me on anything here tonight? Because you got to find something.
No, I've agreed with a lot of things you've said, and that's why I'm quiet. And when I'm not quiet, it's because I disagree. Okay. One is I think that I'm getting back to what I was teasing to before. I think there's just a lot of pent up demand, and I think John is absolutely correct. There you go. on the shift to digital.
Hey, thank you.
I think there's an everyone is really getting down with digital advertising because of what happened during the pandemic and the realization and the waking up.
Because of necessity, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've called this idea of the great compression, right? We digitized everybody. Everybody got on board. What we were hoping to do by 2030, we're doing here, 10, 15 years earlier. I also think there's an aspect of this where Snap is not part of FANG. They're just not a part of that whole Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google world. I don't think they're perceived in the market as being quote unquote big tech. So I think that's an important aspect to it because there always is that need or desire to look for an alternative. And I think that Snap provides that for many people. I also think when you talk about what that perspective was that Jonathan was speaking about recently, maybe part of it is it's very content focused and not necessarily profile focused. I mean, social media tends to be very profile focused instead of content focused.
Yeah.
And then I think there's a couple of other interesting aspects. One is it's purely visual. And if you're looking at other options, whether it's Facebook or Google, you're playing in a different type of sandbox. I've always been banging the drum and loving the fact that Snap calls themselves a quote unquote camera company. I also think what they're doing in augmented reality and then speaking to what can be done in terms of real commerce and placing products into the actual world that you're in, that's interesting. Also, if we're going to look at who Snap's real competitor is, I would say directly probably TikTok. TikTok has been having some tremendous business issues with China and beyond and ByteDance and all that stuff. And I think that maybe Snap also in terms of the whole Apple component of it, maybe when you're given that option and you're a Snap user, you're looking at it and going, well, Snap isn't really tracking that much from me. I'm really just watching this content. It's all over the place. So why not let it track me? What do I care? It may be one of those anomalies as well. And I'm not saying it's any of those or maybe all of those or pieces of those, but I just see it from a different prism where it almost feels like Snap is having its moment because a lot of things that are negative or positive in the world tend to work for them. Like if it's a negative, it works for them in a positive way. And if it's a positive, it's working for them in a positive way. And the numbers seem to do that. Now, we could also just step that all aside and go, hey, tech stocks have been on a rampage anyways. And this is just an accelerant where they're catching up to the others because the truth is that they're not the only ones that have great second quarter earnings. It's everyone in the tech sector as well.
Okay, I have two questions for you, Mitch, and I'll say them both, or I'll forget one of them. The first one is, you and I are probably more in the know because of our advertising experience, and you talked about that these guys, because of the tracking situation, you and I know that more than the average consumer. True? Like
yeah,
we understand that
for sure.
So what I'm wondering is, number one, if because we know that, I have an assumption that I always think, well, doesn't everybody know that? And then I talk to somebody who doesn't work in our industry, and they're like, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, but if you've been hearing in the marketplace that Snapchat is tracking you and that Snap is selling your data,
right.
Really think about the other companies that they compete with for the dollar. And they have, in some way, magic, shape, or form, similar to Pinterest, I'd argue, have been really absolved of that guilt.
Yeah, well, and it's partially because the guilt is getting hogged by the Facebooks of the world. So,
right. So if you're a consumer and you're presented with that button, do you want us to track you or not? You might look at Snapchat and feel, well, it's really innocent, so I don't mind if they're tracking me. Who cares?
Exactly. Okay, totally agree with you on that. And then the other thing is that with Snapchat, it's because it's a less read, more visual platform that I personally, and this is the negative side of me, I don't think it's going to last. I think they're doing better right now in the short term. I don't see the longevity of this. Now, I see the longevity of the platform only because of the technology, but as far as shareability and things like that, I think it's going to get eaten up by somebody. I really do.
I'm not sure. I mean, we're also discounting or haven't really mentioned the whole messaging aspect of Snap. And for many people, it's a real all-encompassing, very close to some of the models we saw in Asia that didn't really transfer over here in North America. But Snap has a lot of components. If you speak to the power users or just general users, where it's beyond just the sharing of images and video, it's the whole messaging component of it. It's the fact that again, remember where Snap started. Take a picture, it disappears. Send the message, it disappears. That's
right.
very.
And I also don't think that they've got their commerce figured out.
No, but again, the augmented reality component of it might help them really, jump some hurdles on it.
Oh, the AI component is perfect. I think that's great. But the thing is that the one-click buy, the fulfillment behind the one-click buy, that's where it needs to go. I haven't seen anything that they're going that direction. Although they're overshadowed in their PR by everybody else. So I don't know. That's why I doubt that it's going to go.
Let me ask this question before we wrap up on this subject, which is all this hype around Snap right now, is it long-lasting? Is this something that's heralding a new bright future for Snap, or is this just a bump in the road or a bright little blip that's making Snap look really good in the short term, but really doesn't help them?
In the short term, listen. Anybody who deals with them, works with them, has vested interest in them. I hope for the best. I look at it as a blip, and that's anybody's guess. But judging by the ebb and flow of tech stock and tech companies, that's what it looks like to me.
For us, the world moves fast, but the world moves slow. This is their 10th anniversary. I think they are backed by people who have been very successful. If you really look at those two co-founders, they are interesting people with a lot of money to push the idea forward. I would question that. I think that they are in it to win it, and they're going to move forward, and they're moving forward in a lot of, like, if I were to just stop the podcast, let's not talk about Snap or Snapchat, but let's look at what are the areas where we haven't even been close to the last mile. I'd say video, I'd say images, I'd say messaging, I'd say augmented reality. I mean, they're playing in a lot of those sandboxes, and very, very specifically, and already embedded with the types of target demographics and markets that you really want to nail. I would not discount where they're at, and I think where they're going to go. And with 10 years and that type of success under their belt, I think the road is long ahead. We are not seeing the waning here of a platform at all. If anything, we're seeing it get that second burst, which we've seen. We've seen Facebook kind of teeter a little bit and then get, where it is today. It's insane. We've seen it across many platforms, so they might just be coming out of that curve. And I think we could see, upwards of an Instagram type, if not even bigger, play here.
Well, moving on at this point, the head of brand for EA, as Electronic Arts, for those of you who don't know the gaming industry, Elle McCarthy, thinks that the term gamer has become an outmoded term that doesn't communicate the full value available in this market for advertisers. Now, what she's kind of positioning it as is it's interactive marketing, and it's an interactive marketing channel as a more correct designation for the platform and for what it offers, what these platforms offer to advertisers. And what I'm wondering, guys, maybe Mitch, you take this one. Does she have a point here? And if so, how does this change the perspective of marketers, agencies, media buyers? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I almost stretched my neck eye rolling when I was reading this one, only because.
Wait, say that again.
Yeah, and I find it really challenging that we landed inevitably on digital marketing and lived in a world where most marketers didn't even want to use digital marketing or keep social media different. They wanted it to come back and just be marketing. And to go back to the word interactive marketing, I just don't see that happening. That's like saying, podcasting is a really bad word. And it is. It's a terrible thing to call anything. It could be streaming. It could be digital radio. Digital audio, smart audio. We could go down a litany of nomenclature that we'd like it to have. But ultimately, the market decides. And I think that if EA thinks they're going to get rid of the word gamer and suddenly see kids wearing Supreme-like shirts, and instead of it saying gamer, instead of Supreme, it's going to say interactive marketing channel, they're nuts.
I don't think she's saying that.
They're going to call it IMC.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, that's a good one.
Thanks.
No, I don't think that's what she's getting across. I mean, what she's getting across is that there are gamers. There are people who are, avid purveyors or avid users of video games who, get big headsets on and gun each other down every night. I mean, there's a thing called gamers, but the large part of this industry, the biggest portion of this industry, comes from the mobile gaming sector. And it's not gamers. It's your mom. It's your dad.
No, for sure. Look, I understand that what they're ultimately saying is when you think of gamers, please don't just think of Red Dead Redemption. Think of Words with Friends too, or think of the games that you're playing on. I totally get that, but to stand there and say these aren't gamers, they're interactive marketing channels, then what you're doing is homogenizing. So find maybe a word that doesn't make me think of gamer being that person with headphones and an extra light plugged in mouse and a gaming PC
and Doritos and Mountain Dew.
Yeah, to be
mom
bedpan,
bedpan.
Yeah, exactly. It's just I always get into the headspace of I don't necessarily like a lot of nomenclature we find in the digital channels, but it simply is. And if you're gonna bang some drums, I would be banging the drums in the sense of what you're doing, in the sense of what is EA going to do now that Netflix is getting into gaming? What does gaming look like? Because it is true. You could watch, an interactive Baby Boss now on Netflix and choose your own adventure. That in theory is a game. That is an interactive marketing channel. I get all that. I've been in the business a long time. I just don't know if you're going to be able to kill these phrases. And maybe time might be better spent elevating the overall brand of EA to have people feel like it's more than just sports or combat video games or whatever.
Jonathan, what do you think? I mean, are you in agreement here with Mitch, or do you feel like getting rid of the term gamer in the broader sense of the industry actually helps advertisers to understand the value of the marketing potential inherent in it, and it maybe could help things? I mean, what do you think?
I get it. I think I'm in violent agreement with Mitch, and I think
because you're smart.
Because oh, now I'm smart. but 10 minutes ago I was an idiot. But you know what?
Now you're smart.
Now I just totally redeemed myself. Listen, here's the way I look at it. First of all, if she, I think the articles that I read about this. I can't remember her name. What's her name?
Elle McCarthy?
Yes. I think, frankly, she made herself look like an idiot. That's
careful there.
I do. Because
personal attacks don't become you.
Unless they want to sponsor the show. Then she's brilliant. But here, if she would have come up with a compelling thing, not a stodgy, static way of saying, well, we're more of an interactive marketing. I mean, come on. Well, I would argue that I could take a concrete block and say that represents interactive marketing. I could make
the other side of it too is, I mean, look, we're going to talk about Roblox a little bit soon, but yep. the challenge, and you see when Roblox starts talking about their numbers and where they're trying to go, is that fundamentally gaming has in and of itself its own advertising marketing issue in terms of attracting brands, keeping them over long term, showing them multiple ways to do campaigns. And when you levy that against what you're seeing in the general marketplace, what you can do as a brand interactively with marketing, gaming does fall a lot further down the chain in terms of being opportunities. Because fundamentally, in the advertising game, we all know this. You're playing two things. You're going direct response. You're going brand storytelling. In a perfect world, you're getting both at the same time. Mm-hmm. And in order
we always say sales overnight, brand over time.
Yeah, and in order for this to work for the gaming industry, I don't know that they've provided a significant value opportunity over and or above what you're seeing, for example, out of a Live Nation when they talk about brand and sponsorship and packages and getting in front of these types of people. Excellent. Yeah, I get it. But that's the bigger problem. And I believe that the commentary was more levied towards that place. Like, we need to be included in all of these interactive media type mixes.
That's
but it didn't land well. No. And then the other problem is, if you're gonna say that, you may be offending a large swath of that public that really wears that name proudly.
That's right. That's exactly where I was going to go. The gamer badge you cannot strip from people. Now, I could also say, well, it's not car racing, it's fast moving billboards, and that's what we're going to call it from now on. That would be stupid, and I would never say that because it's stupid. You can't walk away from your core value proposition, your core audience. Listen, I understand exactly what she's saying. She's saying, no, but we're more than this. We're more than just this. That's what she's trying to say. But then find a creative way to say what we're more than and what we're becoming and what this whole universe is becoming around us.
That's a really salient argument there. I mean, it's not so much that she was wrong in what she was saying as much as she was the vernacular.
You know what? I'm not Jonathan Sackett anymore. I'm God Wizard of the universe, and I need you to refer to me that way. It doesn't mean you're going to take me in that fashion and go, well, he calls himself God Wizard of the universe. He must be. I haven't
been a gamer, an avid gamer, in over a decade. You know, I was at one time, but I still reacted very poorly to this headline. You know, because I'm sitting there going, but I'm a gamer. You know what I mean? Like I hold that badge very proudly, even though I don't still play. I still think of myself as a gamer. And yeah, I totally track with what you're saying. The vernacular matters in this case, and we need to pay attention to that. And Mitch brought up Roblox. I want to jump into that topic real quick before we wrap up. Roblox is probably, if you haven't heard of it out there, it's probably the next big thing for tweens and teens right now. But it also could be the next big thing in game marketing. I've been seeing brands build, because if you don't know, the platform is, you're able to build worlds, you're able to build games on the platform and share them with other people so that they can play it. So brands
are getting a centralized game. When you go into Roblox, it almost looks like an app store in and of itself. Their games are built within the games. There's actually not a real Roblox game.
Right, exactly. Right. It's a platform, and brands are getting involved building all kinds of games on the platform as a way to reach this, you know, particularly difficult market to reach. So I'm just wondering what you guys' thoughts are on it, and how should brands take advantage of it, or should they take advantage of it? Jonathan, you want to start?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's a very interesting platform in that they're basically giving you all the tools that you could ever want. Then you can create your own, you know, webverse, universe, whatever you want to call it, and you can sell it and actually make commerce off of it. So it's a very interesting, flexible platform. I love the idea of it. Now, how to take advantage of that? Man, there are endless ways to take advantage of that. Whether a tire company like Goodyear is going to come in and make the Goodyear presence on there or not, I doubt it. But I think that there's ample opportunity. And by the way, it goes back to our conversation we just had. What an opportunity for true hardcore gamers to flex their gaming muscle and create their own universe there and sell licensure to it.
Yeah, for me, that was the thing that got me the most excited about this, because brands creating games sounds good on paper, but often the games don't live up to the hype. But if a brand were to find a developer on this platform and give them a contract and say, hey, just put our billboard in here or do something, put our product in your game that you create, we'll pay you this money as a result, and then you can make the game free to people. I mean, I think it's a great opportunity.
What if you made a racing game or something, and then suddenly you can get 15% off of your expensive tires or something? I mean, there's look. The thing is, in earning points that you can disperse amongst products that range from tampons to toothpaste. I mean, you could do anything you wanted in there if you create that universe and own your little corner of that. It's endless.
Yeah, I mean, we're deep into Roblox in this family, so I'm not sure I'm tracking with a lot of the conversations here, because unless you're in it, that's not the target to go. Right? We're talking about kids, primarily young kids. I think it's going to be a tough sell to get parents suddenly, jamming into Roblox. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't think I've been wrong in seeing any of the platform. We've seen a lot of these platforms get acquired. What was the one that got acquired for hundreds of millions from Disney and flopped? And they said the same thing. Oh, it's like a whole metaverse.
Club Penguin or something?
What was that?
Club Penguin or something?
Yeah, Club Penguin. Yeah. Okay, so what do I vibe with when I hear these stories? A couple things. One is, do I believe fundamentally that we're going to be looking at some kind of real traction towards the metaverse? I do. And we've seen this really, really live, by the way, with the recent article that just came out in The Verge for Facebook, and talking about Mark Zuckerberg and his perspective on the metaverse. And I think that's a real big aspect we can't put aside. Like, there's something there. And even if it's just geared towards teens and tweens and younger kids, there's a real monetary value there. Challenge comes now when you're talking about geography. Up here in Canada, it's really different to market to kids legally than it is in the States, which is very different than the UK and beyond. So there's an issue and challenge within that has to be resolved. And again, right now, for sure, most of the traction for it is happening in the US, and that's fine. Also, we can put aside the very pricey valuation because it is being traded. Put that aside, fine. Where I think it gets interesting is in the fact that they have a couple of things that I like when it comes to how you monetize a platform. And now I'm not putting on my marketing hat. Well, maybe it's my marketing hat, but it's on my advertising hat. You have a lot of virtual goods being exchanged within that. So that goes beyond building the thing, but you can do things within it. The fact that there are Robux, which is the real thing, and if you have kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you're forking over a lot of money to switch into virtual money for virtual goods. Virtual goods plus Robux equals an economy. So I'm not saying that we're going to be heading down the crypto world here at all, but they could, in theory, with those millions and millions of young people, help them have a wallet, help them have an economy, and that economy could be a global one. And to me, those pillars are much more attractive because you then don't have to fall back on the advertising, which is typically what's happened with social networks and other digital platforms. So when I think of what's happening with Roblox, to me, it has many of the core components that I've spoken about for close to 20 years of what, like, I would have much rather that Facebook didn't do advertising. I would have much rather had they gone down these paths exactly, virtual goods, marketplaces, economy, have their own currency. That to me is where real opportunity and growth is, because if you can maintain a wallet within that, especially as a young person, you might have that wallet be transferable off platform and beyond. So to me, that's where I get the excitement of what's happening. And I feel like the game advertising of it is really in the distance to me versus the overall marketing that could be done with it.
Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do their shameless plug, starting with Mitch Joel. You can find him at 6pixels.com. That's the home of 6 Pixels of Separation, his blog, his podcast, all kinds of endeavors that he's involved with. So tell us, what's going on in your world, Mitch? What would you like to promote?
Oh, you already did it for me. So I will defer to Joe Polizzi and what he's doing at The Tilt. It's a really great free newsletter to talk about the creator economy and how to make money out of content. And the other one I would push you towards is Ann Hanley's got an incredible newsletter about creativity and writing. So I will shill for those two. Okay,
great, because both of them are people who I respect deeply, especially Ann. So definitely check out those links if you get a chance. Next up, we got Jonathan Sackett. You can find him at grkfresh.com. You can also find him at mashburnenterprises.com. Tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote, Jonathan?
Well, as always, I want to promote the show. Bob, you and I have been friends for a decade, I think. And
quite a while.
I love the show. I want to shout out to Super Cooper, Wendy Cooper, who I've become good friends with because of you, Bob. And a lot of Mitch and I are now friends, and I get connected to people because of the show. I get a lot of follow-up, good and bad, from my presence on the show. I just think the show is a great platform for discussion, and I love it. So first and foremost there, we're having our rebranding and grand opening in Manhattan. I'm scheduling that right now. It's looking like it's going to be September. I've renamed GRK Fresh, but for now we're still GRK Fresh. Follow me on Twitter at Jonathan Sackett. And also it looks like we're going to have a bigger announcement, Bob, that Jamal and I are going to be on an upcoming show, and Jamal's going to do some promotions around it.
Yeah,
so that's pretty exciting
absolutely.
Stuff.
It's just like I just on a whim reached out to him. He's been a super fan of the show for a while. So
yes. And listen, I always see his tweets to you that he's always giving me crap for being. He's like, Bob, you sure you want him on the show? I'm like, hey. You know I can see this, right? But I think we got a great opportunity for some sponsorships, some promotions. Jamal's a wonderful businessman. Anybody who's followed him, he's one of the very few guys who's made it out of the NBA. His son just transferred. He's Jamal Mashburn Jr. is now playing for the Lobos, New Mexico, and he averaged 23 points a game his freshman year at Minnesota. So A lot of good things happening, and I'm really looking forward to that show. I think we could do a lot of big things with it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it as well. I was very happily surprised when he said yes and he wants to work it out. So we'll get him on the show sometime in September. We are, as I will say at the end of the show, we are off through August. Sorry out there, but we got to take a break. But we will be back after Labor Day. But as for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me, and you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. My fair, Jonathan, was Netflix in Milan. Netflix created what is a truly creepy billboard experience where you walk past this long video billboard and suddenly this evil, awful, scary creature comes out and walks beside you. And no matter which way you turn, it turns with you and walks with you. Creepy, cool, awesome, talks about this movie that they have out in Italy as part of the Netflix Summer of Horror, which is a really terrible idea, this Summer of Horror, considering all the horror that's going on in the world, but still very creepy and very cool. What do you think?
I agree with you. I thought I was looking up a lot. The thing that they did really well with it is Netflix is actually promoting the people that promote them. So if people are promoting that and they're saying, oh my God, this was creepy, they're re-promoting the people's promotions. And I think that's what a great venue for involvement. So creepy, yes. Cool, yes.
But the name, Summer of Horror, bad.
But the name, questionable.
More reality than fiction.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Now, the fail for this week, I'm going to give to weight loss influencer's Times Square billboard. Her name is Deborah Capaccio. She did a weight loss billboard in Times Square that's been accused of fat shaming. And in this case, Mitch, I think they're actually right, because I'm fine with people pointing out being more healthy. Okay, that's one thing. But when you put a billboard up with the headline "Feeling Fat and Lazy," I'm just like, this steps over a line somewhere. What do you think?
I mean, fat shaming probably wasn't good before the pandemic. I'm gonna say
now it's affecting all of us.
I'm gonna say after. We're all probably facing some level of body dysmorphia and disgust with ourselves for what we've done. Overall, just please, really, is this what we're doing? And the best part is they probably have all this great stuff to give you, but they themselves won't take vaccines because they don't believe in science or medicine.
Yeah, weren't you a little surprised that it was so overt? I was like, oh man, hey, are you disgusting? Well, come see us. And that URL I thought was funny, too, that they had attached to it, but whatever.
And Facebook, for the foul for this week, Facebook proves that they can easily and quickly take down problematic content when a brand is involved. Apparently, some woman posted a very enthusiastic message about the new Dune movie, showing a clip from the old Dune movie that was made by Lynch, whatever his name is.
It was 1984, wasn't it?
Yeah, a long time ago, David Lynch. And they posted a clip from that, and it got immediately taken down, and she was suspended from Facebook for, 3 days or something like that, for breaking copyright guidelines. And it's like, I don't know that Facebook realizes they just proved that they can take down anything instantly if they really wanted to.
Bob, over the years, do you know how many times, look at all the Fortune 50 brands that we worked with over the years. Do you know how many times we've asked them to take something down and they said, well, we just can't?
Right.
That's the big surprise there.
Well, whatever.
They can.
They can do it. It's not a technological hurdle for them. Well, have a suggestion for the list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. Like I mentioned, I'll be back again after the Labor Day holiday in the U.S., which is on September 6th. So the weekend after that, we will be back with a brand new show, and we hope you'll join us then.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly